hello everybody. This is episode 2 of Have I Got Jam for You, which was a spin-off from my Business Jam Live. So I take I call them irreverent guest, somebody who's willing to speak their mind, do a bit of straight talking and poke a bit of fun. So for those who can remember, this is sort of a cross between Alas Smith and Jones and Have I Got News for You. So let me I don't need to introduce. I'll just make this week's guest magically appear. Welcome, Scott McArthur.
Irreverent. Oh my God.
Yeah. My previous guest said I don't know how to be reverent, so that was exactly the right exactly the right thing to be saying. So I hope you're in an irreverent mood.
Well, I think I'm probably always. I think sometimes I'm much too often in that mood, mate. I think.
Yeah, but I mean, to be honest though, there is a movement. I mean, I've seen it more on Facebook, but people are now beginning to, should we say, be more discerning about the people they network with, or a bit more suspicious of the things that they take to be true, or when people make claims about doing something business wise that people go, hang on. And I have to mention one of the things. I think you've mentioned it before. I've mentioned it before, and we have a mutual German friend, I think, who's mentioned it before, and that is life coaches.
Oh,
now I mean there are some people who call themselves life coaches who I've seen do some very, very good work.
Yes.
But I came across somebody the other day on Facebook, and she was making a post, and they were saying that they've had some bad experiences with life coaches, or their clients had bad experience with life coaches, because some are charging 25 quid an hour, some charging 50 quid an hour, some charging 150 quid an hour.
Yes.
So she went on at great length about that, and I just posed the question: well, how, if I'm a purchaser of a life coach, how on earth do I know how I'm getting the best one if it's not by the amount of money they charge?
Yes, there's so many of these. It's always made me. It used to make me quite cross, to be honest. It doesn't make me cross anymore because I've just given up on it. But I mean, you've probably heard me going on about the amount of bullshit that comes out of Simon Sinek, and the amount of guff that's all over the internet about neuroscience, and you just need to look at the people's qualification. I mean, there was a conference last week, neuroscience and leadership, and the keynote speaker was talking about the brain and how the brain works. He was a sociologist. I mean, unbelievable. And it's the same with life coaches. I mean, I've had a couple of, I don't call them life coaches, probably call them mentors, and they've been people that have been there, done it, and worn the t-shirt, and they're very, very, very well experienced, and they're pretty damned expensive as well. So I would go to them. But you see them, I fell out a tree and broke my arm, I'll coach you through your trauma. I mean, there's a lot of that. And you've just got to look at their background. Are they qualified? Have they got a lot of experience? What are there testimonials that are not from other life coaches? That's another thing you see all the time. It's like, the one, my favorite one, it's like Scientology, mate. NLP. What a load of absolute nonsense these people do. And if you look at it, it's a cult. It's like Scientology without the spaceships. It's like they basically take the sort of Tony Robbins stuff, and that's the first few layers. Then at the top suddenly appears some spaceships. I mean, and people buy into it, and they all go along, and they've all got, and I'm speaking in very general terms, but they've all got problems, and they think this is going to solve them, being in this cult, and they do a course, then they're therapists. My daughter's just studied for 5 years to be a mental health therapist. She's just done a degree in mental health nursing, and she's still got another 5 or 6 years before she's allowed to do any therapy. But these people do it after 6 weeks. It's a load of nonsense, but people fall into it all the time. So yeah, I can rant about that definitely I can rant about it.
Yeah. I don't. To be honest, I don't know all of the things where the pseudoscience stuff. I
Oh,
mean, there is a lot of neuroscience which isn't.
oh,
MBTI. I like
oh.
MBTI from not from the point of view of doing the
What's your star sign,
this.
mate?
Yeah. I'm
Well, it's
not
every
sure
bit as
I'll tell
relevant
you.
as MBTI
Yeah, but
profile.
the
Just the
the
same.
MBT yeah the MBTI hasn't been verified by the BPS. I know that,
Oh.
but I like the high level stuff. The type. Have you read the book Type Talk?
No, I have nothing to do
Yeah.
with it. It's just not a fan.
I suppose in a way the nearest thing you could call it to do is people watching, and that's why I like it,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I like to people watch and say, oh, that person's a bank manager. He's one of these. He's one of those.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they link it to the MBTI types, but
Yeah.
I quite, but the actual doing the surveys and taking, it's the same with disc as well.
Oh,
Discs
this
are
is
not
even worse.
discs another one.
God, you know, a mate of mine ended up getting taken to court because he took them on. They took disc on and said it's a load of nonsense. Please provide some evidence, and they couldn't, of course, because there isn't any. And they took him to court, and he won. But that didn't make the newspapers, you know, and
No,
it's a, and the thing is, what it does is it's also exploitation. I mean, I'm getting slightly serious on this for a minute. It's exploitation of people who don't really understand the psycho. I mean, I've got 2 psychology degrees, and I wouldn't touch any of these things. You know, I wouldn't go anywhere near them. And I mean, you said about neuroscience. I mean, if you talk to somebody who's done a PhD in neuroscience, like we've got a colleague who's done it. I mean, she's excellent, but she'll tell you she only understands a tiny little bit of the
mm,
work that she did in imaging. That's it. But all these people are telling you they understand the brain. No, they don't. They just don't. It's you know, you've got to be really cautious. And you know, there is. I mean, you're right about MBTI. You're right. I mean, you can do the same with, you know, star signs. It can start a conversation, and it can be quite interesting, that conversation, and
yeah,
that's okay. But if you start claiming some of the things they claim,
yeah,
it's dodgy ground. It's dodgy ground. It's
yeah.
not professional.
Yeah, you can some of these things. It's a bit again. It's a bit like the left brain, right brain.
Oh
You can yeah. You can use it as a model to get
yeah,
somebody
yeah,
to maybe I don't know distract them.
yeah,
But what you can't do, definitely, well, certainly it's physiologically incorrect.
yeah.
But also when people start saying you're left brained, you're right brained, no, you're
Uh,
not. That's where it goes wrong. And there are lots of models that are useful, but because people have used them incorrectly,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's you have to be very
There's
very
a
very
funny one.
careful.
I mean, I used to do this as part of a keynote, and it's basically there's an inverse correlation between efficacy and cost. So the least effective it is, the more expensive it is. You know, if you go onto the internet and you look for, you know, scientifically valid, scientifically
Hmm.
tested meta-analysis profiling tools, there are some out there, and they're nearly all free, like Ocean. You know, they're nearly all free. But if
Mm.
you go out there and look for one that puts you in a red, blue, yellow, and green color, that'll cost you a fortune. I mean,
Mm.
it's barmy. It's
Yeah,
barmy.
I'm red, by the way.
How are you? Right.
Yeah.
Today you'll be yellow tomorrow and pink the next day and whatever.
But I'm on the border. I can shift between colours. You see.
And of course, the other thing that's really funny about that, a lot of the people that offer it are into this. That, you know, it's a big fad at the moment, and it's underlying there's important things about it. The diversity inclusion brigade, and a lot of them sell these profiling tools, and of course, they're the most anti-diverse things that you can use because they're just putting people in boxes, which
Yeah.
is exactly what they're trying to stop. So no, it's pop psychology at best, and it is actually snake oil and actually dishonest at worst. I think I think the majority of people are in the middle there. They don't really know much about. They've been exposed. I mean, as I say, I've studied it and at university twice. I've got a postgraduate. I've got a master's degree in it, and I still would never claim to understand a lot of this stuff in great depth. But a lot of these people have got a BSc in Google, and unfortunately, they get
Yeah.
there's constant selling and constant testimonials from other coaches about how good it is. and from people who don't know anything about it. So it's dodgy.
A PhD in bullshit would be more useful, would it not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that would be applicable to all fields of science.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is where I've changed my perspective on this, because I used to get quite annoyed when I saw it. And I mean, the annual budgets that go on this stuff is incredible, and they could be spending their money much more effectively and on people who actually know what they're talking about. However, these days I'm a bit more, well, okay, as long as we recognize that this isn't, reality, it might actually help some people. So it's like, and I've got friends that go to tarot readers, and I've got friends that believe in psychics and all the rest of it. Now, that is, plainly, fundamentally bullshit, but it does help some people. So it's kind of like I've mellowed a bit. I don't know if it's just because I'm bored with trying to take it on, but I think as long as people enter into it with a sort of an open mind. Of course, they have a standard line that you get from all the bullshitters. You've got a closed mind. That's why you don't listen to tarot cards. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
So as long as they go into it with an open mind and they take from it what they will, then hey, it's up to them. Who am I to say?
I think I entered into a conversation actually this week with somebody, and I was saying that what they were talking about it's a little bit like the old phrase, "The map is not the territory."
Yeah,
and they sort of they couldn't quite get the fact that the map tells you how to negotiate the land, but it isn't the land.
But it's not the land.
and in some of these cases, these things like tarot readings or whatever might help somebody to make sense of something, and that's what some of these models are. But it's
no, you're I mean, you're right. I mean, the NLP brigade again stole that phrase. I mean, it's a very old phrase and a very helpful phrase, but they steal that and they all go on about the map's not the territory, and it's even that they don't really. I mean, you've described that there really well. That's a really beautiful description of it you gave there, better than I could give. But even that's been hijacked, and it's like, oh God, it's like Maslow. I mean, there's so many of them. The Maslow hierarchy of needs triangle. Maslow never drew a triangle. Never. He never.
I must admit, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and there's so many of these things. It's like, I mean, and I could really go on, but it's like, learning styles, nonsense. No evidence behind it whatsoever. The funny one. I mean, I like the funny ones. You get these women, usually women, they go very close to the mic and they go, "I can sense your aura," and you're like, what? And they believe it. They believe it, and they live it, and they walk through life. I can feel your aura, and it's like, no, you can't. But hey, if, as you say, if that map's helping them negotiate the territory, then why not? Why not? Just don't try and sell it to me.
Yeah, it's just when you get these big arguments online. There was one argument on. You remember you posted something during the week about the efficacy. He says, trying to remember his words of creativity online versus offline.
Yes.
Yes. And I had a good old look at that, and it seems that the difference, it isn't so much, well, it is, I suppose, online, offline in the simplest sense, but it's anything that's divergent and anything that's convergent. It's easy to make decisions and discuss things offline, but it's not quite so easy to do the idea generation, the ideation, as people like to call it, come up with ideas. So we were talking about this online, and this whole stream of stuff came up, and some people saying, well, I've managed to do Zoom and use Mural and it seemed to work for me, and it went on, and I just said at the end, well, it seems to be that if you've got a preference, it works well. If you don't like it, it doesn't. And the stream just stopped.
Yes, it would. I mean, but it's that's a classic example of where, again, it's linked to the bullshit that we were talking about earlier. People think that anecdotes matter. Now, they do matter in terms of it being a nice story, but in terms of the evidence, it doesn't matter, because anecdotes do not equal data, therefore do not equal evidence. And it's like, you can't. I mean, I see people adding anecdotes up and saying, "There's all your evidence. What more do you need?" Well, I need some data. But they don't see
Yeah.
it. And of course, but again, I mean, the word rational is not taught at school. The scientific method, what I think is the greatest invention of human beings ever, second to nothing, is not taught in our schools. What?
Mm.
So no wonder people, think that fairies exist and that, if they wish it, if you imagine, it will become reality. Come on, but that's how they have no frame, no reference
Mm.
frame. And you can't argue with them because they become like cult members and there's no point.
Yeah. The only thing is, if I have 100 anecdotes and I say I have 100 anecdotes, that's actually data.
And that's bollocks, mate. That's what that is. That's
No,
bollocks.
but it is data. It doesn't help me with my argument.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
But it is data. I
yeah,
could have 100 anecdotes. You could have
yeah,
200 anecdotes.
yes.
But yeah,
It's where you get, I mean, this is where, I mean, again, getting semi-serious, one of the things that you learn very quickly when you study psychology, there's a thing called the replication crisis. And that's because you had wizards like Jung and Freud who just made stuff up, designing ideas, and actually very clever. I mean, I'm not saying they weren't clever, but no serious psychology studies these people anymore. But the problem with all of that stuff and all the children that came from it was all nonsense. It was all anecdotes. So psychology came crumbling down a few years ago. It was something, I can't remember the numbers just now, Derek. I'm not close enough to it now, but it was something like 70% of the top 100 psychological principles were shown not to be replicable. That means they're rubbish. So they've had to go right back, and actually the outcome is very positive because they're reinventing a lot of psychological principles. But people keep telling me, I know even people that I find interesting, like Jordan Peterson, who's a very learned, fascist. Even him, he goes back to Jung and he uses Jung's shadow and Jung's archetypes, and I have no issue with that because, like you said, it's a map. But he would never say, "Oh, and everything Jung said was true," and everything that he said, no nonsense.
yeah.
But you can't. I've got the wounds. I can't be bothered anymore. Fighting against it, just can't be bothered.
No, it's the movement, the force is too strong to.
It is the big smelly bullshit cloud. Yeah.
Yeah, the dark side is there.
Yep.
Unfortunately,
it sure is.
The good thing about the dark side is it also gives us a few things to laugh at as well,
It does.
which is
It's very, very funny.
It does, and I have here, as you well know, some bingo sheets.
Yes.
so some things here that might resonate with you. This is consulting lingo bingo, which we've.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
So you either see it in, I don't know, reports or statements from consultants, or sometimes in the people that are actually putting out tenders because they think this is the stuff people want to hear. So, reinventing the wheel. We sort of know what it means, but it uses 3 words and says absolutely nothing.
Nonsense. Yeah.
How win-win? I mean, you sort of know what it means, but
that one I would yeah, you're right. I mean that one is, I mean, if there's a bullshit measurement device here, if we've got one of these things, it does bounce into the red, a bullshitometer. It goes into the red, but when you can put a reasonably true argument together, that when a client, buys a product from you, if what you do is you basically sell them a product, and then you have other products that you can add on to that. And when you add on that product, as a consultant, I win. But if you can demonstrate to them that by hardly any more investment, they can double their outcomes, that is a win-win. So yeah, there is bullshit in that, and it often is bullshit. But there is also a hint. Like a lot of these things, there's a hint of value in it. A hint.
Yeah, but if that was me, I'd want to describe the winning. I wouldn't actually just say, "Oh, it's win-win for you," and it's win-win for me.
Well, you would. You need to. I mean, again, it depends. I mean, certainly, if you work in the big consultancies, you need to be able to describe the win. You don't get away. Some of the big strategy consultants like McKinsey and crowd, they will bullshit a bit more. But certainly, if you get to the more operational, the more intelligent consultants, the Accentures,
Yeah.
Deloittes, KPMGs, etc., they will be able to win that argument and describe it. They've got to.
Yeah. But of course, there's always the low-hanging fruit as well. I mean, the world is full of these. I mean,
yeah, it's funny.
you know, with all the sort of things that we do have. I mean,
The one I
won't
like, mate. I know you've got a list, but the one I like is the war for talent. What the fuck's that all about? And of course, that came from McKinsey. It's bullshit, and it's like, but of course, they infect these people. Doesn't matter if you like them or not; they're very influential. And that phrase, "the war for talent," has infected organizations all over the world. And you know, we're entering a battle. It's like the one about cancer, isn't it? I'm fighting cancer. It's aggressive male language that I don't like. It's not a war for talent. You know, I mean, I could come up with other ones, but it's certainly not a war. I mean, for pity's sake, look what's happening in Ukraine. That's a war.
Yes, it's
You know,
it's yeah. I mean
you know,
yeah. If you're using this,
it's an egg hunt. You know, it's an egg hunt for talent. You know, it's not like in war. Yeah.
Well, that's another thing at the moment. You know, should people be being more careful about the language they use? I mean, because we have wars in progress. People talk about a hunger for. You know, we have more people than ever. You know, struggling to heat their houses and pay for food and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And that's in this country. Forget the worldwide.
God, you imagine?
So,
yeah.
So should we be changing the language we use now?
Oh, that's a biggie. I mean, that is a sort of postmodernist perspective that we're in the middle of the culture war with sexual and pronoun stuff and all the rest of it. It's a difficult one because I get it, I understand it, but I also have a genuine no, that's the wrong word. A fucking big problem with people's feelings getting hurt. I couldn't give a monkeys about your feelings. That's your problem, not mine. And it's like, oh, don't do that. You've hurt my feelings. Well, what? Nothing happened, you know. So I think there is a line there that's different. I can't define it, but there is a line of massive bullshit that you've got to sniff out because it just goes too far. So yeah, I think we should be careful, particularly in the media. Of course, most of the media, and again, they get a bad rap. But if you're writing for the Guardian or the Times, you're a good journalist, and they won't go into that bad space. The Sun, etc., good journalists, a lot of them, but a lot of them will deliberately go in that space. They're not stupid. People assume these people are stupid. They're not stupid. You just need to work with journalists, and you know they're not stupid.
And then there's the Daily Mail, which doesn't have any journalists.
Well, I agree with you there. It's a bit like Myers-Briggs, isn't it? What a load of trouble that is. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just wondering if there are any more.
Well, the ones that I always hated was, I mean, and their meaning. I mean, things like leverage.
Funnily enough, I've got that as one of them.
I bet you do. Added value. The one from inside that I always thought was really odd was bench strength. Bench strength talks about the people who are not earning money, so they're sitting doing bugger all. That's your bench strength.
Right. Yeah. You've got.
There's a lot of them in consulting.
Oh yeah, heavy lifting is another good one, which comes out, doesn't it?
I never understood that. Never understood it.
And the other thing that gets mentioned a lot is it's not really bullshit, but well, I suppose it is bullshit actually. Is best practice.
That is bullshit
because it doesn't mean anything.
Totally meaningless. And I mean, it's becoming less. It's not. I mean, if you look at the sort of the technical consultancies like Aberdeen and Gartner and these people, they sell best practice. That's their thing. But they've kind of moved towards being data specialists. They don't really talk about it anymore because the simple fact is that there isn't even best practice within an organization, never mind taking that to another organization, even within technical departments. Like, I mean, you could historically have said there's best practice in simple things like payroll systems or, CRM, customer relationship management systems. But even that's all breaking down now. So yeah, it is bullshit. I mean, I talk about promising practice rather than best practice.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like anything else in the scientific world. We know that methodologies are important. But every methodology's got its problems,
Yeah.
and you need to shift around between them all. There's no best practice.
No, I liken best practice to a chocolate teapot. It's because so many people. I mean, because my wife used to work in the public sector, I used to hear a lot from there about best practice. But I've heard it as well, and they think it's a cheap way of acquiring what somebody else has.
Yeah.
But the big problem is, unless your circumstances are identical to that other company's or that other person's, it won't work. And if you copy it without understanding the context, it all could all go horribly wrong, and it normally does.
Yes, I mean there was one just 2 or 3 weeks ago that the best companies in the UK to work for. It was honestly like a comedy script. It was all these. I had worked in about 4 of the top 10. And I can tell you right now, they're not the best companies to work for, even in their towns, never mind in the country. There was not a single SME in that whole list. There was not a single, ice cream van or a corner shop or a farm or none of that. It was all the biggies, all the big banks. You ever worked in a bank?
I can't say I have, but I know people who have, and I'm not sure I want to.
No, and there's 2 or 3 of them in the top 20. So no, you've really got to be careful. But again, I would defend, like I did a bit with the disc and the Myers-Briggs bullshit. If you've only ever worked in 1 or 2 companies and you've not really had the space to understand the complexities of the market, this sounds slightly patronizing, but it's true. I mean, one of the advantages of being a consultant for a few years was that I got to work in all these different companies. And this happens in every consulting career. Towards the end of your consulting career, you realize they're just all the same. They're all the same, and they've all got their individual challenges. They've got their psychopaths. They've got their moaning minis. They've got their problems with, industrial relations, as they used to call it. They've got salary issues. They've got training. Every company is the same. And it doesn't matter if it's in the public sector or the private sector, they're still the same, because all the people that are in them are just people, and it does get that it's like a tire. The wear on the tire goes down so far, then it bursts, and people move on because they've realized it.
Yeah, I was actually, whilst you were actually talking about that, I was just thinking one of the reasons for them all being the same is, first of all, the people moving on, as you said, but also company life cycles. There's some stuff that I talk about to do with life cycles of businesses. I mean, you've seen the normal sort of curve, which has inception, growth, maturity, decline, etc.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that the time from start to finish, if you were talking about sort of post-industrial revolution up until about the 1980s, was 75 years.
Yes, right.
So people stayed there, got their gold watch, retired, and left. The senior leaders and managers never experienced a crisis.
Yeah.
and also don't forget it's half that, because once the decline happens, there's only a 10% chance that you'll survive anyway. So so they had 30 something years. Fast forward to the 1990s, and the life cycle was 16 years. So you had 8 years. Now it's 6 years.
Is that right? That's interesting.
So what we see is, particularly in tech companies, but other companies now, is people having to either reinvent their company, or reinvent or supplement their product, with a product every 3 years.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So there's this huge companies coming and going, people coming and going. The people at the top come and go because if they stay too long, they know that they're gonna shit's gonna hit the fan, and they'll have to whatever. So
yes. Interesting. I mean, it's like you look at the leadership classic, like the Bible of leadership is Jim Collins is good to great.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly all those companies are out of business. You know, so
Yeah.
it kind of supports what you've just said. It's okay. Again, though, I mean, I'll pull back because all this really suggests is that this is bloody difficult, you know. And one of the things that you probably heard me say this before, but and forgive me for that. But one of the things that really makes me wary of a person or a company is certainty, right? It's
Mm,
certainty, because the more certain somebody comes across as, and if they're not willing to change their mind, I know they don't know anything if they're certain about it. It's like pop
mm,
music, right? If you look at you know, I'm interested in music. If you look at like the punk movement, right? The story goes, it's not true, but the story goes that the punk movement uh, appeared to stop all the progressive rock stuff, right? Not true, but the punk movement was all these rude little punks, the British punk movement, not so much the American one. And all those punks were like, oh, I hate Led Zeppelin, oh, I hate Pink Floyd, right? You wind the clock forward to now, you find out that nearly every single one of them was a big prog rock fan, and a lot of them are now in prog rock bands, right?
mm,
So they were in a moment. Genuinely, some of them were feeling that they could really make a difference. But the reality was, it's just awfully complicated. And the more you understand something, the less you understand. So it's like,
yeah.
if I could play, and I can play punk rock guitar, no problem at all. It's a doddle, right? It's 3 chords, yeah. But eventually you get bored with it, and you think, how come that guy from Yes has got 25 chords in one song and five chord changes?
Mm,
I'm off. And you get curious and off you go. You know, and I think that is very similar in businesses. You know, I'm all for simplicity. I'm all for, you know, companies trying to take out their KPIs and try to make it a clearer environment. But I know that in 5 years' time, probably what I'm saying is wrong. You know, and because if you understand, as you say, the business cycle, you know, in one moment you could be right, but in the next moment you could be wrong.
yeah.
But that's just the reality of being a human being. We are
Yeah.
multifactorial, complex animals, and that makes things very difficult. So certainty is a really negative trait for me. Really, you're only certain when you're in your 20s, and you're allowed
Yeah.
to be certain when you're like that age. You know, but you grow up.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting when some people think, as you say, thinking they're certain about
Yeah,
what's in store for their business.
yeah.
And well, I'm sure you know them. I know plenty of people who are, should we say, futurists.
Oh,
They're not
Jesus.
actually that, but the good ones aren't actually saying this is what it will look like. They're actually exploring the trends, and
Yes, I know, absolutely. Yeah.
it's much
It's
more
totally different.
fluid.
Yeah.
So if people who are experts in looking forwards and scanning the horizon, if they can't predict it, how on earth can you?
Nobody can predict it. I mean, again, I mean, I do a bit of that in some of my work, but I look at what I know is happening in biology, neuroscience, and in nanotech. I know these things are actually coming.
Yeah,
The difference is that 99.9% of the population don't know it's coming.
no,
You know, so if I say, you know, the future's analog, well, it is. There isn't actually a debate about that. But if you've never heard of the fact that we're building
yeah,
quantum computers because we've got to molecular level switches and digital computers, and you don't know what that means, you're gonna say, what? That's
no,
interesting. It's not interesting, it's actually common sense. You know, we're gonna do there's another one, origami DNA. People have never heard of that. That's basically Inner Space, the movie. In reality, it's coming. You
yeah,
know, it's not. I'm not making it up. It's just over the horizon the other way. So
no.
what I try
There's a
to do
lot
is,
of
you know, stretch that out, and that's
yeah. There's
interesting.
a lot of interesting stuff.
Oh,
I saw a thread the other day, which was it was talking about space exploration, and I
yeah,
said, "Have you actually heard of the International Space Elevator?"
yes,
No.
yeah, fantastic, yeah.
And I mean, that is, that
Charlie
is
and the
so
Chocolate
close.
Factory.
That is so close. It's within touching
Oh
distance.
yeah,
The
yeah,
space elevator.
yeah.
It will happen within. I mean, if NASA's behind it, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, Arthur
Um,
Clarke was pushing that. How many years ago? God, that must
yeah,
be 50 years ago.
yeah,
Arthur C.
yeah. But
Clarke. I talk
all
about
you
it.
need is a very long, strong string
Yeah,
and something in stationary orbit. That's
yeah,
all you need.
yeah.
And they've
And off
got the
you go.
material for the string. They've got the
Yeah.
material for the string.
Yes.
In fact, well, they have. I mean, I actually listened to
Was that
there
that
was an online
carbon stuff? Is
seminar.
it the carbon composite thing? Yeah.
Yeah, graphene.
Graphene. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I listened.
Amazing.
I was at an online seminar month ago, maybe. And there was a guy who's actually creating a design for the crawler that crawls up the graphene ribbon.
Excellent.
You know, they you know, whether they know how many wheels it'll have, what its payload's going to be.
Yeah,
It's, you know, it's all possible.
fascinating.
It just needs some money to do it.
Some
But
cash.
again, that whole thing about two-dimensional materials,
Oh, that's
you know,
mind blowing. That's just mind blowing. Yeah.
it is. You add a capful to a bath full of concrete, and it makes it like 25% stronger.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Nobody knows why, but it does.
It does.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
there's coming up at the Consumer Electronics Show. There's a transparent toaster.
Oh, I've heard of that. Well, I've seen some of
Yeah,
the stuff. There's a guy was going around the country demonstrating his invisibility cloak. I don't know if you saw him doing it, and it's the same.
no,
And it works. It actually works. It's really strange, but it works.
yeah,
So, you know, future textiles, mate. I mean, what next? It's absolutely amazing. You know, it's
yeah.
fascinating.
I want a transparent toaster because I want to be able to see my toast as it's cooking.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what.
Well, that's because you're weird.
But that's because I'm weird. But
Yeah.
also, it happens to actually use less power to heat to heat it up.
Yes. Yes.
So there's a whole
Oh,
there's a whole field.
yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, the Foundation, you know, I don't know if you've read Foundation, classic sci-fi, and that talks about, you know, the space elevator, basically the whole model, the whole empire collapses. Guess where a certain terrible director got his idea from Star Wars from? But you know, there's the whole empire collapses because the city that's built in the elevator collapses. It's the terrorists destroy it. That's the whole story, you know, and then that stuff suddenly, you know, is coming real, and I love that. I think I mean, I'm a big science fiction fan, so I'm always excited about, you know, new science fiction books and thinking, I wonder if
Yeah,
that could come true. But it's like Blade Runner, it's coming true, you know,
yeah.
it's coming true.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's all there is now is I suppose a line between the impossible and the possible.
yes, that's right.
And the possible might be unlikely, but it could
Yeah.
easily happen.
Yeah, but it's also, it's like there's a link to that, to again, a more important issue. It's like people, naysayers, right? You get a lot of naysayers out there. The best example at the moment is the metaverse, right? Most people, when you talk to them about the metaverse, go, "Oh, a load of nonsense," right? They do, and that's a general response to things like, you know, NFTs, the metaverse, and other things that are going on.
Mm.
Now, what they're not thinking straight, because there are literally billions of dollars get into the metaverse. My son, who's 10, knows about NFTs, right? It doesn't matter when people go, it's not going to happen. It is going to happen. But what we do know, and you'll know more about this than I, the initial stuff, the stuff that we've got now, is not going to be the outcome. You know,
No, no.
there'll be mistakes. There will be, but then there'll be something that you and I and no one else on the planet has imagined will suddenly appear, and it'll go boom, and it'll change the world. And it doesn't even matter about the naysayers. They're not thinking straight. I mean, it's a reaction. People say, oh, it's because you're old. It's not. It's because you're not thinking straight. You know,
Yeah,
NFTs, whether you like it or not, are going to be absolutely massive. All the stuff just now is nonsense, but that has been invested in by major players
yeah.
across the world. Doesn't matter if you like it or not, it's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I must admit it doesn't personally float my boat at the moment. But
I'll challenge you in that.
what
It doesn't personally float your boat at the moment. That's the key bit. At
yeah,
the
but
moment.
what people are coming up with, as you said, is not
Yeah.
the finished product.
No, nowhere near.
These are the tools. I mean, I know people who are working on virtual environments for companies,
Yeah.
but they're just playing at the moment.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, that's where it
The
all
only
starts.
I would say the only people who probably have anywhere near a handle on it are probably the really, really serious gamers,
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are the top
because
they're top of the tree. Yeah.
they will know what the possibilities are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
But
mean, one of the I think, like, the Unreal Engine that runs all the, you know, the Fortnite stuff, there's no coincidence that they've just opened up a corporate branch, you know, and that stuff, Unreal HR is one of my keynotes, mate, because that if you think, I mean, I work with a talent company in Scotland. I'm a Ned for them. And I said to the chief executive, I said, look, we need to design a virtual space because we know that interviews don't work. I mean, there's enough evidence to convince anybody, even NLP people believe that interviews don't work. So what else could we do? Because people are looking, there's not really any clear answers in that space. But I said to him, I said, look, why don't we build, a space? And we actually found a space in a virtual art gallery that would rent as a room in there and we could hold interviews in it. And we're like, oh, so all you do then is post them on Oculus Quest, and then you have your interview, and you can interview somebody from anywhere in the world. Now I think that's quite attractive. Now it might not work. I'm not saying it's right, but it might help. So I'm open-minded to that. It's not the finished product, as you say, Derek. It's not, but interesting things, and people just need to develop that interesting muscle.
Yeah. Mind you, if somebody's willing to pay me to play with it to find out, I'll quite happily play to find out. So
I mean, a lot of it actually is free at the moment.
I know. Yeah.
And it's worth having a look. I mean, I've kind of written a piece that I've not released yet, but it's called The Verse and Metaverse. And I was trying to come up with a way to open people's curiosity box about it, because I think part of the problem is, one, it's associated with Facebook, which is very low in the sort of public trust. But I think there's simple things that people could do, and there's a lot of very good writers that they could get a much more balanced situation where we're not certain. Of course, again, I've said at the beginning of this, they're not certain at all. They're clueless, these people, but they're working on it. And they're clever. They've got money. I'm excited about the next 10 years in the metaverse and how it's going to develop.
I just thought of something that's just going to make you really groan.
Yeah.
Somebody who really gets into and used to the metaverse. Do you know what they are?
Oh, here we go. What is it?
They're metaversatile.
Oh, no. Oh, God. Oh, I don't even know what it is. That's almost like a really bad swear word that you would never repeat.
But you know that's going to happen. Somebody's actually going to put a job ad in and says candidate required blah, 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 must be metaversatile. You know it's going to happen though, don't you?
It's going to happen.
You just know it's going to happen. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, this is where I show this nice little caption, which says if you want to get in touch with Scott, if you want to find out more about the things he likes and dislikes, or you want to even just hire him as a speaker for your event, you can get in touch there. Look for hashtag Scott Speaks, and you'll find him because he's everywhere. Believe me.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, Derek.
You're easy to find.
Yes, I'm easy to find. Yes,
you're easy to find, and you could be metaversatile.
Could be, I'm sure.
in the future.
Maybe I am. Maybe I am. I just don't know
it. Indeed, hidden talents.
Yes, indeed.
So there we go. So, thank you, Scott, for chatting for about goodness knows what. It's been a really, really fun, nearly 3/4 of an hour, in fact.
There you go. Yes.
So
I'm sure we could talk a lot longer about it. I think there's
we'll make a list and we'll do another episode in a few months' time.
You're on. No problem at all.
Indeed. So, okay. Well, thank you, Scott, and tatty bye for now then. So, that was it. I hope you folks have enjoyed it. That was Scott McArthur. In fact, look for the hashtag Scott Speaks and you'll find him. And if you want to get in touch with me to complain or throw insults, then my contact details are at the end of this video. So thanks for listening in or watching in. Bye for now.